All right, there we go. Well, good to see you guys.
It's good to see you.
Yeah.
How's the
What's new?
month been for you?
Oh, well, it's day one, right? March 1st. It's good, but February was crazy busy. Yeah, just all over the place. And uh going back to Florida next week. So traveling is back and speaking is back and loving it. I just needed that. It was a good rejuvenating experience for me, but I think people are also needing that energy and
Yeah.
that connection. How about you?
So I wish I could, my life opens up, but I'm immunocompromised. So
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm not going anywhere anytime
This
soon.
is this is our opening up, our fireside chats every month. I love it. Yes.
So, I start lecturing next week at Temple
Okay.
uh, at in their practice management course. And, I wasn't really looking forward to a 2-hour commute each way, but if I could, I would.
Yes.
just
Yes.
just to get out of here. And besides, I love live
Yeah.
lectures. I mean,
Yeah.
it 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 energizes me, seeing people's reactions to things, and it also allows me to. I'm 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 a good extemporaneous speaker, so I can, sort of switch topics on the fly if I see that
Yeah.
what I'm talking about isn't hitting a chord. So,
Yes. Yeah. Adjust and move and go with it and handle what they throw at you too. They run
yeah.
into some
Oh,
challenging things and you got to be able to navigate that with them. And I think that's what allows people to see your authenticity, that you've lived this, you've got some years of experience that you can share with people and make sure that they really get it. I'll do so March 31st, April 1st, now going to be in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So I'm going to wear my Dunder Mifflin office shirt when I go there, and there'll be 7 offices together there. And then in first week of May, it will be Delaware. There'll be 5 offices there with a group. So very excited. I love the bigger groups. It's a lot of energy and gets them fired up, and they just great feedback. Like you said, you get something out of it too. It's very refreshing. So
so
yeah.
so yeah. So my father had a store in the Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area. He had 2 stores actually, and it was my wife's, I think, first airplane flight. We flew to it was now ABE, Allen Bethlehem Eaton Easton Airport. We flew there.
Uh-oh.
It was her first airplane flight.
Was it a good plane? Was it like big enough where she didn't feel like, oh no, this is nerve wracking?
Well, it was back in 1970. It's probably 70-ish.
Yeah.
One of the stores was opening and we went for the grand opening. Yeah, it was interesting. I learned a lot actually from that part of my father's business experience.
Entrepreneurialism.
So I was lucky.
Yeah.
So, I grew up in an entrepreneurial family.
Yeah.
My great grandfather came to the States in the 1880s and started a business, and the family grew that business. That business is still it's still active here in the city.
That's amazing.
Established
Wow.
1890.
Wow.
And I took things for granted, but as I started being in business, I started understanding the value of the experiences that I had with the family, both successes and failures. So I watched the business go up like this, and then I watched the business go down like that.
Sure.
And there were valuable lessons at both trajectories.
Yeah.
And it gave me a leg up, and that's why I started teaching practice management. I was 7 years into practice. It was 1984, and my wife was running the office. She was the office manager.
Yeah.
And she has an accounting background. So we started a course called Business Basics for the Beginning Practitioner, because I saw dentists being taken advantage of.
Mhm.
And that's, so I wanted to ask you a question about that, because something came up last night. Julio and I were talking with a couple of marketing people,
Mhm.
and they were telling me that in their experience, many dentists, if not most, do not own their websites. And I have to tell you, Eric, I was floored.
Yeah.
I would have you seen
So
that?
I tell them all the time, when you go meet with whatever company it is, here's some things that you're going to ask them. Boom. And one of those questions is, okay, if this goes south and I help you build this website because I'm sending you my information, I own the rights to it. I get to take it with me if I want to, if I have someone else manage it. Not always the case with certain companies. Yeah, not always the case.
They were telling me that the companies own the URL, own the domain.
Yeah, that's really, really bad management if they haven't figured that out. I mean, you really got to register your own domain, and you probably should be registering 4 or 5 of them, that work for your practice and not just one, and they all go to the same, site. But yeah, they got to own their own domain names. They got to be able to own their website. And I will say too, they've got to be meeting with that SEO company every single month to say, all right, I'm sending you all this money every month. And I've seen anywhere from 800 to, I talked to someone today, 3250. So, so they're paying a lot of money. What am I getting for it? And you have to create accountability. And I use the example, if you're paying, All-Star as a coaching company, you're going to want to meet with me every month. You want to get your money's worth. It's the same thing. You got to, show me what you're doing. Yeah, there's a few things I go through the checklist with them, but that's one of them. Do I walk away owning my website?
I'm adding this, not changing it, but I'm adding to my lecture series.
Yeah.
That, because I try to give them the building blocks. They're students, they're 3rd and 4th year students.
Got it. Yeah.
I'm trying to give them some building blocks. And I talk about, one of the big takeaways that I promote is build your advisory board. Start connecting with people who can help you, who can supplement your knowledge base, because it's impossible for you to know everything. And dentists, unfortunately, have this mentality that they do know everything. And that gets dangerous. So anyway, I'm adding this thing, buy your name. If for nothing else, buy a URL with your name on it. Dr. Michael Goldberg. I own that. I own Dr. Michael Goldberg, Dr. Michael J. Goldberg, Michael J. Goldberg, DMD. I own several varieties of that. And I just thought that was
common.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the average, the average kindergartner asks 200 questions a day, and the average college senior asks 2 questions a day. And one of them's like, where's the bathroom? So they're not, who's learning more? Who's learning more is the kindergartner, at some point between kindergarten and college, somebody said, well, that's a dumb question. And then they shut them down, or they observe someone, whoa, I'm not going to ask any questions. Then it just shuts down our willingness to learn and ask and do things. It's like, what should I do here? I even experienced with my own clients, like, you did what between the last month when we talked and this month we talked? What did you do? Why would you do that? Why didn't we talk about it? I hear you. Yeah. It's the willingness to be vulnerable and ask a question and seek some support. It's the mastermind, it's Strength Finder, it's all of those things.
So you said touch on something I want to maybe explore a little bit, because the willingness to be vulnerable. So, I monitor several Facebook groups, closed Facebook groups. And on one of them, there was a question asked, and we were getting into this whole idea of dentists not asking questions, dentists being maybe perhaps a little paranoid, and not willing to be vulnerable. And my practice's motto was causes before symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's sort of I used to joke, I used to constantly ask my mother why. And my
Why is
mother's
it doing that?
my mother's thing was, why is a crooked letter? And I didn't understand what the heck that meant, but I heard that a lot because I was always asking why.
Yeah.
So when I look at something, that's what I want to know why. What is it about dentists that makes them like that?
So my experience has been what I've heard from doctors, you tell me, they're in dental school and they got these mounted models and they've spent time and all of this energy putting this, whether it's a temp or porcelain together, and they've molded it and it took them so long to do it. And they present that to their professor and their professor grabs the models and goes, bang, 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 and it just falls apart, right? And their self-esteem starts taking the hit, starts taking the blow because their self-esteem is not plugged in where it ought to be, right? It's internal, it's higher power, it's internal, whatever that is. It's not plugged in where it ought to be. Self-esteem. It's plugged into what do other people think of me? How's my performance? And they allow that voice, Tom and Jerry, sitting on a cartoon with the angel and the demon and the devil's, talking to them and negative, you're not good enough, you can't do this, whatever it is. And then when they go out into, practice, they have such a high level of approval addiction and fear of rejection and don't shoot the messenger stuff.
That's really interesting. So, I taught even clinically for 30 years. And we were supposed to be talking about titles, but this will segue into that well.
Good.
It's one of the things that we teach, or one of the ways we describe how we measure things is via competency.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great because maybe the word competency is, when you use a word, you're always tied into the opposite of that word as well. So it's not just competency, it's incompetency.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to speak to the deans about maybe changing that, because it's a significant impact later on in the mindset. I mean, you and I know the biggest challenge we have with any client, it's mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And if we're doing something in dental schools that are, that are contributing to a negative mindset, we need to stop doing that.
Every school is. Think about Think about grades and how teachers treat kids and all of this. I mean, you're seeing some of that start to shift and how and I'm not saying everybody gets an award. That's not what I'm saying. Everybody gets first place ribbon. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, sometimes it's what you teach, not just judgment. And sometimes that judgment comes across as a grade or failure, or you're not good enough. And then it's like, oh, I'm never going to be able to get this done right. And that just perpetuates. And it will affect competency for sure, because belief in oneself, like you said, that's the starting point.
What's interesting is that then, and I'm sure you've seen this too, that then sort of gets translated into how the dentist treats their employees.
Or their employees treat the dentist.
Well, right.
Yeah. Because if the dentist is approval addicted or has fear of rejection or weatherman syndrome, slight chance, possible cloudiness, increasing, this whole wavering thing, the team will take advantage of that, or they'll wonder, why aren't you leading? Why don't you have a leadership reins on this? Where are you with that? And it creates all sorts of things. And then from the doctor's perspective, it's either I go hide or I go dominate. Instead of, hey, let's do this together and let's get on board with the vision and be confident in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a foundational starting point for case acceptance. You can't get a patient to say yes if you're doubting yourself. They're going to pick up on that. You can't get, I'm going to have my team do all that. Well, they got to see that you're confident and competent in it as well. I talk
Yeah.
about credibility, and the definition of credibility from my experience, credibility equals confidence in your competence. So how do you convey to a patient, right, that I'm competent, that I'm credible? Well, every single interaction that your patient has with your office starts to frame the reference of how competent you are as a dentist. If Julio answers the phone and he's phenomenal on the phone, you're a great dentist in my mind. My perception of your credibility starts to increase. My confidence in your competence, you become more credible. The website, the interactions, the referral source. When I walk into the facility, is it 1970 shag carpet or is it nice? All of those things play a role in it. Do I wait for my appointment? Am I seen on time? Maybe a minute early, right?
So I gave a lecture on Friday. Yeah, I gave 2 lectures on Friday. So one of them was branding, and the other was the patient journey.
Yeah.
And when we talk about titles, I said the titles that we give people don't match what the journey a patient has is. So it matches the tactics that we use along the journey, but what's important to the patient?
Mm-hmm.
When someone calls your office, they have a need. They're calling for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They need to go from point A to point B. And your job is to figure out what that point A is and what their point B looks like.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're doing. That's what almost any business does.
Mm-hmm.
Dental practice is a little bit more challenging because there's a lot of emotional, psychological stuff involved in that. But they're at point A. They want to go to point B. What are we? Doesn't make a difference if you're picking up the phone or you're a dental assistant or you're a hygienist or you're a treatment coordinator or a financial person.
Yeah.
The role, the objective, the ultimate objective of that role is the same. It's to help that patient go from point A to point B. So if you don't include that part of the role in your job title, you're not communicating your willingness to help that person to get to where they want to go. So it's, this has been a blessing. As hard as this is for everybody, this has been a real blessing for me because I've been able to sit and think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not always something people have time to do. And I've had plenty of time to think and to speak to people and read stuff and, connect the dots.
Write a book.
That stuff. And I sort of did a postmortem on my career and looked at what I did right, what I did wrong. I had some great results, made some big mistakes, but ultimately, I think anybody who goes to dental school would probably want to have the practice that I had. At least the last version of it.
the latest and greatest version of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And how did that happen? At first it was by accident. It wasn't totally guided. I didn't get a coach. Or have a consultant in the practice until 2006. So, I'm in practice almost 30 years.
Learning, trial and error and life experience. And
so it was only the last, 16 years of my clinical practice that I had a coach. I still do.
Yeah.
And the value of that was, I mean, I had the coach before 2008.
Things got tough.
Well, it got tough for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't get tough for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it got tough. It got tough for me because at the time I went into a partnership with two other docs, and it was tough for them. And that made it tough on me. My practice didn't skip a beat.
Yeah.
I was able, because my coach and my mastermind group. So I started also belonged to a mastermind group in 2006. So being in that mastermind group gave me the foresight to do certain things, to actually analyze what I did. So I built a practice based on physician referrals.
Yep.
I sort of fell into it. But once I realized what I had, and I didn't do it until, I mean, you've been to mastermind groups, you get up and you say something, you tell people, you give the elevator pitch about your practice, right? Your business. And the elevator pitch, as I'm crafting it, was I built a practice where most of my new patients come from physician referrals. And I treat, hundreds of physicians. I have a healthcare practice. And I didn't really appreciate the benefit of that. And everybody else is like, wow, that's like the Holy Grail, man. How'd you do that?
How'd you do it?
Well, I did it because I was part of a hospital, faculty. I ran a residency program. My office was across the street from the medical center. But once I figured that out, I poured fuel on the fire because I didn't do much before 2006. I didn't do much to promote it. It sort of happened organically.
Yeah.
So then I started writing books, my book Beyond which was a healthcare guide for physicians. I wrote, special reports that I had printed out that I sent to all my psychiatrist patients. So psychiatrists do two things that have significant impact on dentists. One, they prescribe medication.
Prescribe something that's going to cause dry mouth or something.
Dry mouth and clenching.
So
the SSRIs cause bruxism, or they exacerbate existing bruxism, whatever. But the fact of the matter is that all of a sudden, so I send these things out, and all of a sudden my referrals from psychiatrists went through the roof. And I started doing more TMD stuff.
Nice.
But I didn't know that. I knew it, but I didn't really appreciate it because I just assumed that this was
everybody did it. Everybody did it. Yeah.
Well, I knew not everybody did it, but
it was common knowledge, maybe. Or
I didn't really appreciate the value.
Okay, I got you.
Right? So, I mean, I ask people all the time what their superpowers are. People don't appreciate their superpowers until someone else looks at it and say, oh, you're really good at this. What can we do to pour fuel on that fire and make it really work well for you?
Yeah. And being organized enough to figure out what are your strengths, superpower, to then maximize that so people want to send people to you for that solution, and that turns it into a win-win, entrepreneurial or not, it turns into a win-win. And I think, unfortunately, too many dentists and therefore their teams believe if we just stand here and rely on hope, people will show up. And I think it's positive to have hope, but hope isn't enough, right? I hope patients show up. No, you have to actually go and do something. I think too many dentists right now think, or they'll think, let me sign up for every insurance plan in the world, and then they'll send the patients to me. That's a problem. And we've been helping clients get out of so many plans now. It's ridiculous. I think they finally are recognizing it, but at the dental school level, understanding that you don't have to be in network with insurances for insurance to pay you. And in fact, they'll pay your whole fee if you're not in network. So the question becomes, why would you be in network with it? Like, just that understanding that that's the wrong path. But then the whole hope thing is, I need to be a marketer. I need to be an entrepreneur. I need to be a networker. Like, I mean, that's what you did. You networked with the right people, right? And it takes energy. Can't just be hope.
So, and it's interesting because I didn't actually learn that from dentistry. So it was part of our mastermind group. And my coach who pointed out that if you want to go after a certain group of people as patients, figure out where they are. Where are the people that you want to treat also hanging out? So, I'm a Dan Kennedy guy. So Dan says this all the time, so he does this, message market media triangle. And you start with the market, defining your market, and then you craft a message for that market, and then you find a media to deliver it. So he's saying, well, who else has that market? You define the market. Who else is treating that market? All right. Is it, in my case, physicians?
Yeah.
Right. But what about if you're if you're a wellness focused dentist? Okay. I mean, or holistic.
Yeah.
Naturopaths, vitamin stores,
chiropractors.
Right. Chiropractors I never had any. I didn't have much luck. I mean, I treated a couple of chiropractors. Never.
They didn't send you anything.
Never.
No connection.
I never got anything from the chiropractors other than their family.
What about, maybe you did this? I'm curious. Just what about a mastermind group? If you're a dentist, you're a mastermind group, and you go, okay, who are the 5 clinical people that I want to mastermind with? So I've got I don't know, psychologist, like you said, maybe a chiropractor, maybe not, naturopath, whatever. And is that beneficial for a dentist, or is it too single-minded? Oh, I just work with this one doctor in this one category.
So it's really hard to find other healthcare professionals that are also entrepreneurial.
And they're open-minded to the entrepreneurial side of it. Yeah.
So I had one. So Jonathan Aviv is an ENT. And he actually did he did this transnasal esophagoscopy. So if you have gastric reflux, they usually put a tube down and look down. Well, he does it through the nose, which means you don't have to be sedated.
Yes, I would.
So he did it to. So I happen to have had it back when, and I've had the endoscopy, which where you get good drugs. But he did it in the office without anything. Wasn't the most pleasant thing, but I did it without. He did it in the White House during the Obama administration.
Wow.
To one of the staff.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, Jonathan's been on Dr. Oz a bunch of times.
Oh, okay, gotcha. He's more entrepreneurial.
Very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
But we talk about, we'd go out to dinner and we would talk about stuff. And it was after I wrote my first book, What the Tooth Fairy Didn't Tell You. And I had him write a blurb about, I think I had him write a blurb about it. He got the bug and he wrote a book. So he's now The Acid Watcher's Diet.
Oh, now did he refer patients to you too because of acid reflux? Yeah.
So our connection was again through the hospital. So I was the director of the general practice residency program, and our residents and the oral surgery residents, the ENT residents, and the plastic surgery residents sort of got together on a regular basis, and the attendings would get together. And that's how I befriended Jonathan, became a patient. And but you don't find, the problem is finding like-minded. So chiropractors in general are usually fairly entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
I don't
But
know.
didn't get any referrals from them though, huh?
I've never really, so I think, you know, one of the problems with chiropractors, again, you know, they're sort of outliers in the healthcare realm, and they think, and some of them, not all of them, think that they can treat almost anything.
Mm.
So everything is a matter of vertebral balance.
Alignment.
Yeah.
I gotcha. So maybe they're fixing even things that are outside the scope, or maybe dental scope, and instead of referring to you.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think every chiropractor probably thinks they can take care of TMD issues.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
So
So that takes us back to, hey, patients at A wants to go to B, and now there's all of these things in between that we've got to assign direction to and make the patient feel comfortable through that process. And some people are going to come to you with all sorts of different Bs, whatever they're getting to. And how do you make sure you customize? I'm trying to see where you're going with this. Evaluate, adapt, evolve to what works for that patient.
So he's passed away, but a guy by the name of Dick Barnes. I don't know if you've, okay.
Yep.
So Dick Barnes, the first time I went to his lecture was probably in the late 70s. And he presented his treatment plan method, which consists of 7 slides.
Mm-hmm.
The 7 slides have nothing to do with the patient in the chair. It's a before and it's an after.
A potential after.
Nope. This is in the late 70s. You couldn't do that yet. All right. It was a patient that he treated before.
Yeah. Oh, gotcha. It's an example. So the after treatment shot.
7 slides of before and after. And he said, okay, you're like this, and we want to get you here.
Yep.
Is that where you want to go?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. This is what it's going to cost.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't talk about procedures.
Mm-mm.
He didn't talk about all the things you need to do to get to the end point. He wanted people to buy the end point first, to agree that that's where they want to go. Once they've emotionally accepted that destination and they've bought that as their own, this is where I want to go, they're not going to let stuff get in the way. Then you get that. That's when the sales prevention department enters the scenario, and it blows things. So, like I said, somebody answers the phone. They have somebody on the line who wants a solution.
Yes.
When they don't get into the office, or when they get in the office and they don't accept the case, it's because someone screwed up.
Yeah.
We didn't connect to the emotion behind that underlies what the destination that they want to go. So it's not just enough to get to the destination. What are you going to feel like when you get there?
Yeah. Well, it's simple. So let's make this simple for people. Obviously, All-Star Dental Academy, I get to work with a lot of clients, and I won't obviously throw anybody under the bus, but I had this office working with that they had 2 admin people up front. And since COVID, it's been a wait to get in as a new patient. We talked about this last time. And the person up front, one of the persons was saying, well, yes, we can get you scheduled, but our next appointment isn't until. Okay. Now that person leaves, career change, and there's another person in there. And she's really bubbly. She's really excitable and outgoing. Oh, we'd be happy to get you scheduled. Our next available spot is this. Now it could be sooner because we're working on getting them sooner, but it also could be the same way. And our new patient numbers doubled. Comprehensive adult, just by saying one little thing. So when you talk about getting them from A to B, sometimes it's like, well, it's not just the end point. It's all the points along the line that create that credibility, that the system part of the process that allows the patient to say yes to number 1, so they can say yes to number 2, so they can say yes to number 3. And number 1 is website, phone call, whatever it is. Yeah.
Well, I think, again, some of that has to do with the perception of what your job is. So what's your role?
Your title, like you were saying.
Yeah. Your role
is to schedule people.
Is to be a guide.
Yeah.
You're going to guide somebody has a problem.
Yeah.
You're going to guide them to a solution. Now, the person who's answering the phone's role is getting them into the schedule. That's the ultimate, right? That's the ultimate objective of the phone call is to get the patient into the schedule. So one of the things that we've been advising is at least as a stopgap, because we've had clients that have had the same issue, that patients can't get in for over a month.
Yeah.
That's where a virtual appointment can really take the pressure off the situation.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. I need people dentists to relax a little bit and know the end result is still a face bow mounted model. That's okay. We'll get there if that's what the patient needs. But to start with, it's like, that's not everybody's need.
So no one needs a face bow mounted model.
So I'm not gonna say that. You're the dentist. You can say that.
No, but the patient doesn't need it.
They don't know.
The patient needs a result.
The dentist believes that they all do. And so how you get someone in to get
that kills me because that's what, if you look at doctors' websites, they're showing the process.
Yes.
None of that, any process that involves teeth and dentistry scares the crap out of a normal human being. Anything. That beautiful CBCT that you have on your website, the scanner that you have sticking in someone's mouth, that's scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
No one wants that. There aren't people lining up outside of dental offices for the early bird special. People come to us with a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Discounts and motivation and manipulation aren't really going to create the long-term joy of what it takes to care for a patient. The simple example of what you're talking about, and I take clients through this with All-Star and say, all right, when you're on the phone and you're talking to patients, what's the most important question you're going to ask them? And I'll hear things like, oh, get their name. How did they hear about us? What's their chief complaint? What are they looking for? What do they want to get? All good things, and all are important in building that rapport and engaging in the patient conversation. And then I flip the script and I say, okay, those are good answers. I said, now, what's the goal of every new patient phone call? They say, well, to get them scheduled. Well, there's your title, right? Okay. Say, so if the goal is to get them scheduled, what becomes the most important question? Go back to my first point. And they still struggle. They still don't realize that I have to ask the patient if they want to schedule the appointment at some point. It's amazing how often just that little nugget gets missed. Every now and then I'll have somebody hit a home run and go, oh, the most important question is to ask them if they want to schedule something. Yeah. So funny to hear how the human brain works or doesn't work sometimes. That mental exercise of going, oh, that's right. Almost 2/3 of the time, we don't ask the patient if they want to schedule.
Really?
Oh my gosh, in dentistry, 64% of patients don't get asked if they want to schedule. Dentists will say things like, you have any questions for me? Nope. All right, go up front, see Betty, she'll get you scheduled. All right, we're all set here. Let's get your 6-month appointment scheduled. And there's no ask. There's no repeating back from the patient. Yes, I want to do that. Instead, we don't want to be salespeople. You need a crown. We start telling people you need a scheduled appointment. So that's why that statistic is so high. And then on the phone, we become these answering service people who just answer the question, and we don't control the conversation. We don't guide them to scheduling. And therefore, we miss out on how to schedule people. We miss that whole process because we're not in control of the conversation. We're not the guide. The verbal skill for that is asking questions. So it's interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah. Because, I'm now thinking about how dentists are trained.
Yes.
And, so they're trained that the first thing you ask somebody is their chief complaint. Mm-hmm. Right? Chief complaint, history of present illness, past medical history. It's drilled into our heads. And that gets translated down the road into a process in a dental office that isn't patient friendly.
That
The other
becomes
thing-
the focus.
Right.
Yeah.
So the other thing is, and this is something that I think is sort of a recent, revelation to me is, and it shouldn't have been because I did listen to Dick Barnes. And we believe that our role is to educate patients.
And they'll do what's in their best interest.
And that just, again, it's scary. I see dentists with, x-rays showing,
Read this with me. Yeah, I didn't go to dental school, buddy.
yeah. It's like the mountain models. I mean,
Yeah.
we show the mountain models, right?
Look how good it can all work for you. Yeah.
Unless you have a practice full of engineers. So engineers like that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Right?
the
They
C
want-
personality. Yeah.
Yeah, they want to know all the little how to get to the end. Most
Yeah.
people like, hey, listen, you know what? Give me some propofol and let me wake up and let it be all done.
Yep. So I have two things that I try to wake dental offices up with. When you have a conversation, do you take my insurance, or how much is this? That's a transactional interaction. And if you engage in it transactionally, that's all it's going to be, is a transaction. Yes or no, hang up, succeed. But if you can figure out how to ask questions to convert that into a relational conversation, you're now getting somewhere. You can develop relationship, and then there's commitment, and then there's agreement, instead of, yeah, new patients don't show up in our office. I wonder why. Well, let's look at what we're saying on the phone, how transactional versus relational is. And the second thing, I think the acknowledgement is, yeah, we're in the tooth industry, but we're in the relationship business. And if you fail to make that connection, you won't have a successful practice. Perfect example. We've all seen the movie where he or she marries he or she, right? Woman marries man, man marries woman for the money, right? And we're watching the movie, and the person that has all the money doesn't see it coming. And then the money disappears. And in the hope at the end of the movie, we hope that they just stay married for love and not for the money, right? This whole concept. This goes back to being in network with insurance companies and going, well, I come to you because you're in network with me. And you're not doing anything else about the relationship. It's just transactional. When you're not in network, they're not staying, because that's not how you've built the relationship. So if you're starting out in network and you're accepting insurance, that's okay. But your goal is, if you want to be out of that because you want to work for profit, then you have to figure out how to develop that relationship, and your team's got to be on board with that. Yeah, it has to be about there's a person attached to the tooth walking through the doors.
Yeah. So I think the extension of that is that once it's relational, you need to constantly stoke the trust. So,
Yeah.
and that's where I believe a constant communication with your patients works, because you're reinforcing the relationship, and you're building more, you want to call it credibility,
Yes.
trust.
Rapport, trust.
Yep.
Yes.
All of that stuff needs to constantly be done. I mean, we talk about it in with marriages, right? I'm going to be 49 years in a couple of months.
Nice.
How does it work? You look back at it. Okay, how did that work?
Talk it through. Yeah. You work it out.
I mean,
you communicate.
It's constant. It's having, having a weekend without the kids on a fairly regular basis. Thank God my parents were able to take the kids when we were younger. We did that twice a year. My parents took the kids, and we went into Manhattan for a weekend.
Yeah.
Alone. So I know you've been away, so with the kids. So we made a differentiation between vacation and trip.
Yeah.
A trip was with the kids.
Yeah.
A vacation was without them.
I had it backwards. I didn't realize I had it backwards this whole time.
No,
That's good.
trips are different objectives.
Yeah.
Right.
And I say all the time to offices, hey, we're having this problem. What's the answer? And I'll purposely slip up. I'll say it's communication. No, wait. It's effective communication. The answer lies in effective communication. And right now you're communicating, you're just not quite sure how to effectively communicate on this. And you see it in teams, inability to communicate well with each other and create friction amongst the team because they don't understand each other well. And you see it in the patient communication, right? Whether it's case acceptance or even marketing, right? And now you're opening up another realm to me, which is referrals and how you interact and how you communicate effectively with them. And what can I do to make your job easier? That question that you shared with me last time we talked, that's effective communication. That's a way to get results in a way that's positive. It's a win-win for both people. And I think people don't take the time to figure out, well, how can I communicate this effectively? I just want to communicate. I just want to throw the words out there and see what happens. That's where we have to get on the same page and make sure that we're interacting with people.
So what's interesting is,
we lost him, Julio.
I think so. He got frozen.
Yeah, he's frozen.
Dr. Goldberg, can you hear us? Hello?
There he is.
Oh, he's back. He's back.
There he is. Hey, we lost you for 5 whole seconds. We panicked.
Yeah. So I was saying, it made me think a little bit, because part of the challenges that we're seeing, I'm sure you're seeing the same thing, is with teams.
Yeah.
The Great Resignation has impacted dentistry probably more than it has in most places.
That's right.
And maybe there's a corollary with the trip.
There's a correlation between what? I don't know. Now I'm on pins and needles here waiting for him. Yeah. So I'll just say, so we keep the recording going here, Julio, and everyone who's going to watch.
Right.
For me, he's talking about the Great Resignation. I mean, more people have left dentistry than are coming on board. We're seeing a scarcity issue with anybody who is looking for a team member. And it starts out like admin is hard to get, then assisting is even harder to get, and then hygienists even harder to get. Forget about associates. All of that is very difficult. Not only is it hard to find people, but because it's hard to find people, the stress level, the burden that's placed on the people who are being worn thin starts to increase exponentially. And now we have team members who are at odds, they're at friction. And I'm spending more and more time with teams now talking about culture and how to create that culture. I'm assuming you guys are seeing that too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a global situation. It's a global, but almost a global, right? So we're seeing that too, the Great Resignation, when, it's obviously the pandemic has the influences into that kind of consequence, and we're trying to adapt. So
yes,
you're the expert. I don't know what else can you tell us about that. I mean, the Great Resignation kind of advice that you can give us.
Yeah, I would tell people, look, you got to work with who you have, and you got to be flexible. And so what that's going to take is communication, effective communication with your team that you have there, so that they know that you're sympathetic to the struggle, what's going on, because everybody's under the same stresses, whether it's at work in a dental office or even at home, there's things. And what's happening is I've got to stay home now for 10 days or 5 days or whatever it is. Now my team is abandoned by me, and it creates resentment, and they resent me for being at home, forgetting that they were just 2 months ago, they were the ones at home for 10 days or 5 days, and we were carrying the load for them. And so what I would challenge teams with is, number one, do you have a culture document that you review where you say, all right, this is our culture. These are our 10 things that we really are passionate about. And maybe one of those things in there is teamwork. And under that is forgiveness and communication and
effective communication. Yeah.
Effective communication. Yes, you're listening.
Right.
I like it, Julio. So, and the second thing is, does your team know your vision? Are you communicating with, hey, I'm having the same struggle here as the dentist, knowing that we're missing someone, and I want to appreciate you for what you're doing. And so are you communicating appreciation to your team? Because as soon as you're not sending that message of appreciation, you're going to start losing, and you're going to lose more people than you're getting back. So what I would say to doctors is, send a text message to a team member or two every week. Just pick. And so if you have 8 team members, right? everybody gets appreciated one of the 4 weeks because you're sending 2 messages out. It could be
Right.
text message, it could be handwritten note, it could be audible, whatever works for that person you're sending the message to. It doesn't always have to be, well, I gave them a raise a year ago and that should tell them I appreciate them. And if it ever changes, I'll make sure I let them know. It's got to be constant appreciation. And I'll say for all the team members that are listening and watching and paying attention, you ought to appreciate the doctor too. At the end of the day, titles do not change that we're all human beings.
Yes.
Dentist, hygienist, assistant, admin, doesn't matter. We're all loved the same amount. And so we need to love each other equally. And so trickle down, trickle up doesn't work. It's equal, it's horizontal. And so showing appreciation to everyone is key. So I would say, make sure you know your culture elements and that you're focused on what you're about. Everybody's a little bit different, but so you got to create your own. Nobody can really give it to you. It stems from your vision. And then you got to communicate those things every month. And then other half of that is appreciation equally amongst everyone. That's going to help you navigate a very, very difficult climate that we're in. And hopefully at the end of this, as people graduate from school and get towards summer, we start seeing more workforce coming to us that we can hire. So, yeah. That sound good?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, this was good.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what happened with Dr. Goldberg. Definitely, I'm gonna keep in touch. I'm gonna send you an email if necessary. I'm gonna discuss it. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to reconnect. I don't know what happened, right?
He's enjoying the ability to not have so much city around him out in his beautiful home, and therefore the internet isn't as trustworthy probably. So we'll do this again next month. We'll do the fireside chat next month, and hopefully this is beneficial for everybody who's listening. So awesome.
Perfect.
Thank you,
Mr. Eric.
All right.
Take care. It's been a pleasure. You too. Have a nice day. Bye.